Welcome back to Feelings Forward. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Major Simran Singh. He has served in the Indian Army and now he's working as an actor. So, welcome, Simran.
Hi, Niharika. Thank you so much. Firstly, thank you for having me here on Feelings Forward. Yes, I've served in the Indian Army, but acting abhi kar pa raha hu ki nahi, that is still subject to a lot of things. But
Yeah,
yes, thank you for having me here on the show.
my pleasure, and thank you so much. Thank you for being here and taking out the time. Before we get into talking about mental health and life and stress, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
You've given such a wonderful introduction already. I'll just try and, in a nutshell, tell everybody about me. So, I am Major Simran Singh. I'm a veteran gunner officer of the Indian Army. I've served the country for about 10 years, which is excluding my training period. And I come from a family of army officers. I'm a third generation officer. Before joining the forces, I was in Mumbai because I went to Mumbai to study films at St. Xavier's College, Bombay. And then I acted in films. I did TV commercials and subsequently I was working with MTV as well. But not being a part of the Indian Army or not wearing the uniform, being the only generation, the rebel,
Yeah.
that was not going to be wearing the uniform irked me a bit. तो मुझे लगा कि यार मुझे आर्मी ज्वाइन करने के लिए ट्राई करना चाहिए एंड I've just recently realized that probably I am one of those rare people who was recommended for the armed forces twice. I was recommended in 2010, but उस time I had also cleared my entrance exam for St. Xavier's. And then I requested my father कि dad, I want to study further. So my dad said, "Ja Simran, ja जी ले अपनी जिंदगी." Yes, come to 2014, I'd done a little bit of work in the industry, but then जब मुझे लगा कि मुझे शायद try करना चाहिए एक बार फिर से, so that I can follow the family tradition. I was fortunate enough and I got recommended in 2014. And then I went on to train at the Officers Training Academy, Chennai. And then I was commissioned in 2015.
Wow. Amazing.
Yes, it's been a journey, yes.
Great. I mean, I've never spoken to a 4G before.
Oh, wow.
Before you. So I'm so curious about so many things. But tell me, like, is it? I'm assuming, I'm guessing, and I feel like maybe I'm right also. It must be a hard life.
Yes, it is a very challenging profession. It is a very delicate attempt at balancing things. And I think that is what the requirement also of this profession is, that you are always in a high pressure situation. आपके पास वो लिबर्टी या लग्जरी नहीं होती है कि यार मेरा काम खत्म हो गया, अब मैं घर जा रहा हूँ, या कल संडे है तो मैं अब छुट्टी पे हूँ. एंड स्पेशली एज एन ऑफिसर इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट यू हैव ऑल द आंसर्स. आपके ऊपर लोगों का इतना ट्रस्ट है. People have so much of faith, and there's so much of shouldering of responsibility, that saying no is not an option.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we are all training for war. And there are no runners up in war. Either you are a winner or you're dead. So that's the harsh reality of this profession, and that is why it is that much more important that mentally you're aligned with the requirements and the goals and the objectives. So yes, it's a challenging but a very fun life.
तो क्या हेल्प करता है, मतलब आई मीन यू सर्व्ड फॉर 10 years, उससे पहले आपकी ट्रेनिंग थी, अब आप you're working as an actor. तो first question that I'm getting in my head is, what helps you to be mentally aligned, or are there any techniques or coping strategies that you use, or it's something you do? क्या करते हो आप to?
That's a very, very good thing that you've asked me, and I'm sure a lot of other 4Gs also out there would probably resonate with this idea, that I feel one very key factor of building or training an army officer is the training itself. When we went to the academy, I come from a military family. Okay, my father was also an officer. My grandfathers, they've also served the country. They've seen the 65, 71 wars. मैं military hospital में पैदा हुआ था, army schools में गया था. But जब मैं academy गया तो मुझे ये realize हुआ कि nothing prepares you as much as undergoing the experiences yourself. And the basic idea of training in the academy is to break you down, not just physically, also mentally, and then build you from the ground up, into the requirements of an officer. And I think probably वही एक चीज़ है जो services selection board interview जो होता है 5 days का, that's also probably just to be able to gauge if you have the capability of being built into something what is required by the organization, you know, because I feel that I'm a very average person. It's just that if anybody else can, then I also can, you know. That quality or that aspect is very important. And you know, very interesting that you talk about mental intricacies of things, you know, perception, thought process बहुत important चीज़ है. और तभी शायद सर्विसेज सिलेक्शन बोर्ड में कभी ये नहीं बोला जाता है कि आप सिलेक्टेड हैं या आप रिजेक्टेड हैं. You know, it's a conscious effort to say that you have been recommended. So we all have been recommended to be commissioned as armed forces officers, and those who are not are simply stated as not recommended. So nobody is selected or rejected, because selection आप उस entity का करते हो जिसमें कुछ specific qualities हैं. You know, but human beings are constantly evolving, changing. So the basic requirements of being an officer, if you're meeting them and you have the ability to be able to function at the best of your ability, even in the challenging environments that you're put to, while being average, you know, not being in any extreme, that what I think personally makes you eligible to be recommended as an officer.
Right. Any examples that come to mind about when you were having a difficult time, physically, mentally, you were under some pressure, stress, especially when you were serving in the army? So many.
Yeah, because you know, that's the reality of
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
You are constantly under a lot of stress, a
Right.
lot of pressure. You know, timelines are so strict. And you know, one thing that I really take pride is in the fact that your decisions actually matter a lot, you know, and they at times are the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
तो मैं जैसे अपनी यूनिट में भी बोलता था कि आई वुड आस्क पीपल, यू नो, कि सबसे भारी और सबसे हल्की चीज़ क्या है. एंड आई फील इट इज़ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. यू नो, जिसने समझ ली उसके लिए सबसे भारी है, जिसने नहीं समझी उसके लिए बहुत हल्की है. क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है. सो आई प्रॉब्ली डोंट रियली रिकॉल एन इंसिडेंट पर से, बट मेरी यूनिट में एक क्या कहते हैं, बहुत अच्छा कोट लिखा होता है, यू नो, बिकॉज वी आर ऑलवेज ट्राइंग टू कीप द मोरल अपलिफ्टेड एंड यू नो पीपल मोटिवेटेड. सो देयर वाज दिस वन कोट विच हैज स्टेड विद मी फॉर एवर, इज दैट यू मिस 100% ऑफ द चांसेस दैट यू डोंट टेक. यू नो, सो मेरे लिए इट ट्रांसलेट्स टू कि यार आपने अपना चांस तो लेना है.
Correct.
You know, and when you talk about being in the game mentally, is that, you know, as an officer you are required to be leading men.
Right.
And leading men into certain death. That's a very difficult situation to be in, you know, but that trust and that bond that you build with people, that what you are doing is right at that moment, can only come about when, you know, you have a certain camaraderie with your people, and you have a certain bond, and people know that, you know, you mean well for them. You would want nothing bad to happen to them, you know. So वो एक बहुत important चीज़ है. And of course, you know, I don't really recall a specific incident, but I do recall that when we used to be in the academy, what we used to do is we used to have एक जोश रन होता है हमारा. You know, it's a 30-kilometer endurance march with your complete battle load, and that happens all throughout the night, because Chennai the temperatures are really bad, and you know, there have been cases of extreme heat strokes and all. तो पूरी रात हमको चलना होता था, and sleep is a luxury in the academy.
अच्छा.
So all we would do is we would just start singing, and थोड़ी छोटी छोटी चीज़ें होती हैं जो अपने मोटोज होते हैं, यू नो, हर एक कंपनी का. सो आई एम फ्रॉम कोहिमा कंपनी, यू नो, फ्रॉम द ऑफिसर्स ट्रेनिंग एकेडमी. आई एम फ्रॉम द 100th कोर्स, सो वी कॉल आवरसेल्व्स द सेंचुरियंस. सो कोहिमा कंपनी का द अडाज गोज लाइक, व्हेन द एकेडमी वॉक्स कोहिमा रन्स, व्हेन द एकेडमी रन्स कोहिमा फ्लाइज. सो जब किसी का मोराल लो हो रहा है तो सारे चिल्लाना शुरू कर देते थे, सेंचुरियंस फ्लाई, किलर्स फ्लाई. So, you know, these are, I think, positive affirmations or reaffirmations आप कह लो, but इस जोश के हिसाब से फौज चलती रहती है.
वाओ. तो जो मुझे समझ में आ रहा है वो है कि वो कम्युनिटी और वो सपोर्ट जो मिला, उसने उस चीज़ से बहुत हेल्प हुई टू सर्वाइव एवरी सिंगल डे इन दैट प्रोफेशन. एक दूसरे की आपने इतनी हेल्प करी, एक दूसरे का मोरल uplift kiya. It was about the community.
See, you know, that's the beauty of this organization, and also the backbone of the entire structure, it is always the team. You cannot do anything individually. Probably that is also what they check in the SSB interview, that can you be a part of the team. Of course, if you can lead a team, and also if you can be a part of the team. So teams can move mountains, of course, and that is how the Indian Army functions. The Indian Armed Forces are inherently dependent upon having excellent, efficient teams. Even, and if you talk about the special forces, they might go in with 2 people or 3 people, but they are also referred to as a small team. So that community, बड़ी स्टैंडर्ड सी बात है, बड़ी बेसिक सी बात है कि जिन लोगों के साथ आपने मुश्किल टाइम देखा हुआ है ना, वो आपको ज़िंदगी भर याद रहते हैं. So that team spirit and that camaraderie and that unsaid belief and faith that, this person does not mean ill for me. That plays a big part. And one more thing that I'll share is that, I would always tell my troops and even my colleagues, my brother officers, that we need to keep talking. It's very important to share. Right. Because a lot of times soldiers have a very isolated life. So it is even more important that you are there for the other person. And we do have these concepts in the army where we make it a part of a formal routine, that in the unit, to see that people are doing mentally fine, we will have a concept called char yaar. That in the battalion or in the regiment, and specifically batteries, there will be 4 people who will be buddies to each other. So they are hanging out and chilling and talking to each other, or people will just communicate. Because a lot of times a lot of problems get solved when you voice them out. So these are the things that just keep people going. And generally saying, I think that military men and women, of course, are mentally quite strong. So there must be something very major या उनकी पर्सनल लाइफ में, प्रोफेशनल लाइफ में, जिसकी वजह से उनको काफ़ी ज़्यादा नेगेटिव इफेक्ट हो रहा है, बट जनरली दे आर एबल टू deal with a lot of things with a lot of ease.
Yeah. I'm sure, because there's so much uncertainty.
Absolutely.
And that can be like, I'm just thinking that could be so anxiety provoking कि आपको पता नहीं है. Even for family members, मेरा question ये भी है कि of course you come from a family of army officers, so उससे थोड़ा सा they all
it softens the blow.
little they all have lived those experiences for a long time, so they probably know how to deal with it, but still easier said than done.
Yes.
Uncertainty around that, वो वहाँ पे क्या होता है, like घर पे कैसा माहौल होता है with parents or family members?
Yes. So I'll address this in the 2 parts that you asked. See, uncertainty is a given. It's the nature of the job. So your basic task is not to think about the uncertainty. We as soldiers only think about our objectives and the requirements of those objectives, be in terms of training or resources or planning everything. Because you have to meet an objective, and uncertainty is not a part of the game. You cater for that, but uncertainty is not something that you put over focus on.
Okay.
And coming to the families, yes, it's a very, very delicate balance. And I from the bottom of my heart, I salute all the ladies and all the families of our armed forces, because like, since I come from an army background, when we were also operationally deployed, तो मेरे को घर से ना मतलब कोई frantic calls कभी नहीं आते थे, and so I felt really left out, because other officers would get calls. And then I spoke to my parents one day, and I was somewhere in ईस्टर्न लद्दाख, एंड आई सेड कि यार आप लोग फ़ोन नहीं करते हो, आप लोगों को याद नहीं आती है क्या है, सबको कॉल आते हैं. सो माई मॉम जस्ट सेड कि बच्चे, वी नो दैट नो न्यूज़ इज़ गुड न्यूज़, सो वी डिडंट हियर एनीथिंग नेगेटिव, एवरीथिंग इज़ पॉजिटिव. that understanding, a lot of people don't have. Generally for people it is कि भी constant communication बना रहे, then everything is fine. And today, in an age where information is so widespread and easily achievable, बहुत anxiety provoking हो सकता है वो. We do have our own systems that the families also have their own community. And since everybody stays together, it's that same thing, you are facing the hardship together. And probably that's what gives them strength. And I think children are still ignorant or not aware, but definitely kudos to the families who are able to brave it out and deal with it. I mean, I'm still trying to understand their process, because yes, you're right, it can be very anxiety provoking.
आपने ये मेंशन करा जैसे 4 यार वाली बात मेरे को बड़ी अच्छी लगी, एंड टॉकिंग इट आउट विद समवन एल्स. Similar space I come from. I talk to different people on a daily basis, and obviously therapy is about talking. What do you think about mental health, the concept of it? कभी आप therapy के लिए गए हो, या your idea, your understanding of the concept?
Mental health per se is an important aspect of life, because I come from a background where I understand that if you're correct mentally, then you're able to deal with a lot of things physically. And I'll give you an example from my training days. When I had gone for the SSB, you're supposed to do a round of 10 obstacles, and they are varying in degree of difficulty. तो मुझे ये लगा कि यार ये 3 obstacles जो हैं ये मेरे लिए बहुत difficult हैं, तो ये शायद मैं नहीं कर पाऊंगा. So I will use that time and I will do the other obstacles and try and complete those. So when I finished, the group task officer, he called me and asked me that, test number 25, you left those 3 obstacles. Why did you do that? So I said that, sir, I think probably I'm not physically capable of finishing those, completing those obstacles. So he said that, no, I think you are absolutely physically capable. I'm timing you right now. Go. The moment he said go, I did not think. And I just went and I was able to complete those obstacles. And then I came back. I was panting, and then he says that, you said that you were not being able to complete those. You were physically not capable of completing those obstacles, but you just did them. Because sir, probably I was not aware of my capabilities. So mentally it is very important to be aware, and then to be able to have faith in oneself. जो आपने mental strength की बात बोली, we generally discuss and we say that battles are won or lost first in the mind and then in the battlefield. So it is extremely important to be mentally sound and prepared, and everybody can have their own process, but the basic fact I think personally remains that आपको खुद से बात करनी है, आपको खुद को समझना है, खुद से अनकम्फर्टेबल क्वेश्चंस पूछने और उनके आंसर्स देने हैं, बिकॉज आपसे बेटर आपको और कोई नहीं जानता. Even if it means that you speak to yourself and you feel that things are out of your hand, and you need to reach out to somebody who is probably better trained, better equipped, better knowledgeable than you to be able to deal with things. But the first step is to be aware. So I think that is why mental health and awareness is mostly very important.
Absolutely. कभी कभार ये भी है ना कि there are so many struggles in life that now I have to sit and think about and reflect about my uncomfortable feelings. I rather distract. I rather just go out with my friends or watch TV or scroll on Instagram. आजकल इतनी distractions available है, short term gratification available है कि हम नहीं सोचना चाहते. तो आई थिंक इट्स वेरी इम्पॉर्टेंट, और जब लिसनर्स सुनेंगे तो शायद they'll understand how important it is to sit down with uncomfortable feelings, because you can't avoid them forever.
See, very correctly brought out. And me being a soldier, it was generally enforced upon me, क्योंकि हम कई बार isolated रहते हैं, and I just chose to take it as an opportunity to be able to understand myself better and speak to myself. और जब ये realization हुई यार कि मेरी प्रॉब्लम्स कोई बाहर से आके नहीं सॉल्व करेगा, आई हैव टू टेक चार्ज, and I have to deal with things because only I am aware of what my strengths and weaknesses are. तो आपको अगर ये लगता है कि आपको किसी चीज़ को चेंज करना है, इम्प्रूव करना है, तो वो आपको पहले खुद से बात करके उस चीज़ को आइडेंटिफाई करना पड़ेगा. एंड लाइक यू सेड, डिस्ट्रैक्शंस वो प्रॉबली इसलिए भी है क्योंकि हम कई बार खुद से बात नहीं भी करना चाहते हैं. We don't really want to hear the truth from our own selves, so that is why we consume ourselves into like you said, instant gratification and distractions. But I feel it is important. तब आपको फिर शायद अपने बारे में better समझ में आए, and then you can choose your life's course accordingly, which I feel is important. And that is probably the first step towards mental well-being and growth for me.
Absolutely. कभी कभार लोगों को ये भी नहीं पता होता कि when we are talking about self-awareness, sometimes I hear many people say, I don't know myself well enough. But for that also one needs to sit with
100%.
yourself.
100%.
Like we'll get to know each other when we sit with each other.
Correct.
आप मेरे बारे में पूछोगे, मैं
Correct.
आपके बारे में.
Correct.
Similarly, अपने आप को जानने का भी वही तरीका है.
Absolutely. And like I said, you are you have to accept yourself as your best friend. I mean, I'm a filmy person, so I love films. But मेरे को जब वी मेट का वो डायलॉग बहुत सही लगता है, गीत का. शी सेज, मैं अपनी फेवरेट हूँ. कोई तो रीज़न होगा ना कि वो अपनी फेवरेट बनी. तो एवरीबडी शुड बी देयर ओन फेवरेट, बिकॉज आपको खुद को वैल्यू करना पड़ेगा. एंड अगेन, फर्स्टली, it doesn't matter what others think about you, if they value or not. It will only matter if you don't value yourself, बिकॉज फिर आप अपनी हैप्पीनेस का कंट्रोल शायद किसी और के हाथ में दे रहे हैं. इसीलिए आई थिंक इट्स इम्पॉर्टेंट दैट यू आर मेंटली एट पीस एंड एट ईज. एंड माई एस्पिरेशन, आई वुड से, और माई गोल मेंटली इन लाइफ, और मतलब मैं आज से लाइक 50-60 साल की बात कर रहा हूँ, बट मैंने कहीं पढ़ा था या शायद किसी गाने में सुना था, या मेरा ये थॉट है, आई डोंट नो, आई एम वेरी कंफ्यूज, बट आई वॉन्ट टू बी लाइक वाटर, बिकॉज आई थिंक इट विल गिव मी पीस, it will give me stability, and I can take any form that I want. So that is very liberating. तो मैं अपने आप को, अपने थॉट्स को, अपने माइंडसेट को उस एक एंड गोल तक अलाइन करता हूँ, so that probably I'm even if I'm like 60% there, I'm still going to be trying to meet my goals. And that is what gives me peace. That is where I would want to see myself and how I would want to see myself. और ये सारी चीज़ें मुझे शायद खुद से ही बात करके समझ में आई. Right. Because generally when we were fresh out of college and we were trying to appear for interviews and all, या generally ये discussions चलती हैं that आपको interview में पूछा जाएगा, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? मुझे तो अभी भी नहीं पता कि मैं where do I see myself 5 years from now. बट शायद उन चीज़ों का आंसर इसी में छिपा है कि आप खुद से बात करो, आपको समझ में आए कि आप लाइफ को किस डायरेक्शन में लेना चाहते हो. एंड दैट इज़ वेयर मेंटली इफ़ यू आर अलाइंड टुवर्ड्स योर थॉट्स, physically of course things will start moving in that direction, and you will generally be much more at peace, and be able to cut out the clutter. Since you've been into speaking to a lot of people and understanding their thought processes, their mindset, and now that you've had a conversation with me as well, what is the difference that you feel that the mindset or the thought processes are there in a soldier and probably a civilian or a person not trained for combat or high pressure situations?
So I've had the privilege to meet a soldier for the first time.
Thank you.
What has stood out to me today is that I think soldiers, I don't want to generalize, but that's the thought that I'm sitting with, is that soldiers probably are better, if I could say that, at accommodating to uncertainty that we were talking about.
Yes.
Right? कि ये हो रहा है, अब ये हो रहा है, अब ये हो रहा है. So they're very quick to respond to those new challenges, the changes that happen on a daily basis, and dealing with that uncertainty, that stress. But I think that could be different from someone who's not serving in the army or is not trained, like you said. But I'm also sitting with a feeling that, or a thought that, two soldiers can also be very different as individuals, because there's so many variables that contribute. Like I said, that we are a product of our experiences,
Yes.
right? तो आपकी लाइफ में क्या क्या एक्सपीरियंसेस हुए हैं उसने आपको शेप किया है, इवन बिफोर जॉइनिंग द आर्मी, फॉर एग्जाम्पल
Yeah.
लॉस ऑफ अ फैमिली मेम्बर है, या लैक ऑफ सपोर्ट है, फैमिली ट्रॉमा है, चाइल्डहुड ट्रॉमा है, बुलिंग है, कुछ मतलब देर आर सो मेनी एक्सपीरियंसेस दैट एन इंडिविजुअल कैन अंडरगो
Hmm.
which contributes to who they are
Correct.
in the
Absolutely.
present.
Yeah.
तो आई फील लाइक दो सोल्जर्स भी शायद एक जैसे ना हो.
Of course, 100%.
तो आई एम सिटिंग विद दीज few thoughts in my mind, and before off camera we were talking about rigidity and
Yeah.
discipline
Yeah.
and all of that as well, and it was so I was so fascinated कि जहाँ हम rigidity की बात कर रहे थे और अब मैं accommodation की बात कर रही हूँ कि soldiers can be rigid in their, they have their fixed ways, they're
Yeah,
trained in
yeah.
a particular fashion, so they have
Correct.
their set ideas.
Yeah.
तो rigidity भी है, पर अब मैं कह रही हूँ कि मेरे को लगता है कितने accommodating भी है, and those two completely polar opposite qualities can coexist in one individual.
Yes.
Which is extremely fascinating to me.
You know, honestly, I think it's a matter of the training that we undergo. Specifically, if I talk about being adaptable and flexible, that's a fundamental rule of battle and war. You know, you have to have plan A, but you are supposed to have a contingency plan, a plan B.
Yeah.
And when I went to the academy, एक बड़ी interesting बात हमारे instructor ने बताई थी that gentlemen, always the first casualty is going to be your plan. You know, so that thought makes you understand that it is so important to have your plan B ready, and it has to be as bloody good as plan A. You know, it is only the circumstance or the situation that will dictate which plan succeeds, but that flexibility and that adaptability is a prerequisite for any mission, any operation, any objective. But when you talk about rigidity, rigidity is primarily in procedures and not the mindset, you know. Because things are so volatile and so dynamic, you know, everything around you changes so rapidly that आपके पास एक fixed line of thought and a fixed standard rules होने चाहिए that help you even when everything around you is not in your control. एक हमारे को academy में ना रगड़ा जब लगता है, you know, basically you're made to do front rolls, you know, a lot of times, and initially it used to be painful, and then it became enjoyable, and then it became a matter of habit. It was I mean, we used to feel much more comfortable rolling than running to from point A to point B. And then when I went to my unit, you know, and we were supposed to ensure the training of our troops, I realized, you know, the logic behind training hard is that when, you know, you hear the first round explode near you or the first bullet passes by your ear, your brain will shut down.
Yeah.
You know, panic and anxiety, they will strike you. You know, fear will come into the picture. But your muscle memory, which has developed through training, you know, that is something which will be fundamental, and that helps you get out of tricky situations. And the complete idea is to first safeguard yourself and then react. Fire का जवाब fire से, you know, we say in the army. तो वो एक बहुत ज़्यादा important चीज़ है, and that is where, you know, your rigidity comes into play, because you have to abide by certain principles, certain fundamental rules.
Right.
But the situation has to warrant the respect for you to be adaptable.
Yeah. The organized and the unorganized
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
The calm in the chaos.
Yes.
Fair
A
enough.
method to madness.
Yes. अब जो ये कह रहे थे bullet and
Yeah.
blast etc.
Yeah.
और
Yeah.
muscle memory.
Yeah.
अब now that you have started a new journey,
Yeah.
ऐसा होता है कि कहीं कुछ बहुत बड़ा sound आया and your body reacts to that sound because it remembers.
Yeah. It's been some time. It's been about a couple of months that I've not been in service. So now it's not a big issue at all. And generally, you know, even the forces, and I remember from the times in my academy as well, if you're a bit self-aware, you understand, you know, that साइकोलॉजिकली एंड मेंटली आप थोड़े चेंज हो रहे हो.
Hmm.
जैसे हम जब अकेडमी में गए थे, we formed some amazing bonds, but then those same set of people 3 months down the line during training हम एक एक बिस्किट के लिए भी लड़ते थे, you know, which generally in life we would not even think about. But that is how your mind under pressure changes so much. And you know, in my service I've been 6 years in Jammu and Kashmir, and out of which 2 years was in Eastern Ladakh. So I've been in certain high pressure environments. You know, we make it a point that we let people disengage and decompress. That is very important, because क्योंकि हमने academy में देखा हुआ, you know, that our mentality and our psychology changes. It is important to give yourselves and of course other people around you in your command a breather. So वो थोड़ा सा, you know, the first 2-3 days of chutti, you know, it takes time to wean off, because you're just suddenly, and today thanks to the connectivity, you are generally home in about 2 to 3 days. So it takes about a week to wean off of that. But yes, there used to be a time जब क्या कहते हैं, वो जो छुट्टी पे आने के पहले 2 दिन होते हैं, उसमें कहीं भी कोई पटाखा चल जाए या कहीं टायर फट जाए तो आपके इंस्टिंक्ट्स थोड़े से उस साउंड को थोड़े अलाइव रहते हैं, बिकॉज जनरली यू आर अगेन ट्रेन्ड टू नोटिस समथिंग विच इज़, यू नो, erratic. I think that is normal, but again, you know, the whole idea of people to be able to disengage, you know, is a conscious reminder to tell yourselves कि हाँ, अभी everything is normal, I am at home, सब ठीक है, बाकी वापस जाके देखेंगे.
And for a person who is not able to disengage?
Generally that doesn't happen, you know, and time is a great thing. Time helps you deal with a lot of your situations and a lot of problems. And honestly मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जब बंदा छुट्टी जाता है ना, या कोई भी ऑफिसर या कोई भी जवान छुट्टी जाता है, उनके घर के डायनामिक्स और घर की इतनी सारी चीज़ें होती हैं, उनका माइंड बहुत आराम से डाइवर्ट हो आता है. सो यू नो, इट इज़ जस्ट अ नेचुरल कोर्स ऑफ just living, and you know, you get into the habit and you learn how to disengage.
जैसे आप कह रहे थे कि ऑफ कैमरा
Yeah.
कि जब एक सोल्जर छुट्टी जाता है,
हाँ जी.
उसी हफ्ते में सब कुछ होता
Yes.
है, बर्थडे, एनिवर्सरी, दिवाली, होली.
या आई होप आपके ऑडियंसेस को ये ना लगे कि हमने ऑफ कैमरा बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बातें की हैं. या इट वाज जस्ट अ स्मॉल थॉट, देन वी वर डिस्कसिंग कि यू नो, जनरली हम बहुत इम्पोर्टेंस दे देते हैं इस फैक्ट को कि आज मेरा बर्थडे है, यू नो, आई एम द सेंटर ऑफ द यूनिवर्स, कि आज तो भाई होली है, आज तो होली मनानी पड़ेगी.
राइट.
बट ट्रूली ऑनेस्टली आई फील कि एक सोल्जर जब घर आता है, वो चाहे दिसंबर में आए, चाहे जैन में आए, चाहे अप्रैल में आए, वो 1 महीना 40 दिन 45 दिन की छुट्टी में ही उसका हैप्पी बर्थडे, एनिवर्सरी, मुंडन, दिवाली, होली, ईद, क्रिसमस, सब कुछ कंप्लीट हो आता है. बिकॉज द सर्टेनिटी ऑफ यू नो लाइफ at large, and also, you know, of the forces, is that life is going to be very unpredictable. You know, तो आपको ये समझ में आता है कि जब मौका मिले जितना मिले उतना खा लो, सो लो और मना लो. You know, that's probably the idea behind celebrating. You know, I realized that थोड़ा सा weird thought है ये, और शायद थोड़ा सा selfish भी हो सकता है, बट मुझे ऐसा लगा है कि यू नो, एक टाइम के बाद आप वो दोस्त बनाने ना पॉसिबल नहीं हो पाता है, यू नो. तो मेरी लाइफ में जैसे मैं देखता हूँ, तो कुछ मेरे स्कूल कॉलेज के फ्रेंड्स हैं, और उसमें भी सारे नहीं, वो थोड़े से फिल्टर होके, जैसे सबकी लाइफ में होता है, कुछ गिने चुने लोग रह जाते हैं. देन आई केम अक्रॉस अनदर ब्रीड ऑफ पीपल कॉल्ड माई कोस्टमेट्स, यू नो, जिनके साथ आई ट्रेंड एट द ऑफिसर्स ट्रेनिंग अकेडमी चेन्नई. They are a different breed altogether, and I used to hear stories from my father and my grandfathers that, you know, they used to do this with their course-mates and they used to go there. Similar सी कहानियाँ फिर मेरी भी बनने लग गई, क्योंकि मैं भी जब academy गया तो I also had those people, and I know for a fact, you know, that like we discussed community, this is a set of people that have my back always. And then I met the third kind, which is my unit officers, my brother officers, and of course the troops. So इन सब में मेरे पास इतने सारे लोग हैं, और मुझे लगता है शायद इसने मुझे थोड़ा बिगाड़ भी दिया है कि मैं और नए दोस्त बनाने के लिए मेरे में शायद वो इंटेंट नहीं है, या मुझे वो ज़रूरत फील नहीं होती है. Of course, I love meeting new people and talking to new people, but the space that these three category of people hold in my heart is something different. And क्या कहते हैं, I am so privileged and so blessed to have these people in my life.
मैं ये सोच रही थी, आपने अपनी ट्रेनिंग की इतनी बातें करी, जो दैट वाज वेरी फाउंडेशनल फॉर यू, नॉट ओनली एज अ सोल्जर बट आई थिंक एज अ पर्सन एज वेल. तो एक कॉमन मैन या एक इंसान जिसको वो वाली ट्रेनिंग नहीं मिल रही, बट ऐसी कोई ट्रेनिंग मिल जाए लाइफ में, बिकॉज लाइफ इज ऑलवेज गोइंग टू बी डिफिकल्ट, war like situations in different ways would come up for different individuals. ऐसी कोई ट्रेनिंग मिल जाए जिसमें वो प्रेप कर ले अपने आप को, इतना स्ट्रॉन्ग बना ले, इमोशनली रिजिलियंट बना ले, या मेंटली स्ट्रॉन्ग बना ले. डू यू थिंक दैट कुड बी मेंटल हेल्थ ट्रेनिंग्स, थेरेपी, इमोशनल अवेयरनेस, हम इसको कुछ भी नाम दे सकते हैं. डू यू थिंक दैट कुड बी इट?
Okay, Niharika, specific techniques or processes or activities per se, वो तो आप ही बता पाओगे because you're the expert. I can only share what my understanding is and what my experiences are. And when I speak about training, it's very important to understand and keep in mind the context and the frame of reference, because all of us were training to become soldiers and to go to war. But having said that, it does not mean that one has to be a soldier only to go to war. I personally feel that soldiering is for life. Every one of us is a soldier, and we are all soldiering on in our mission called life. हर एक इंसान अपनी ज़िंदगी का हीरो या हीरोइन है, और उन्हें अगर अपनी ज़िंदगी को ऑप्टिमाइज करने के लिए, अच्छे से जीने के लिए किसी भी रिसोर्स का सहारा लेना है, बी इट मेंटल हेल्थ, बी इट फिजिकल स्ट्रेंथ, बी इट इमोशनल वेलबींग, इट जस्ट एड्स टू द होल जर्नी. एंड उसी चीज़ में इफ़ यू टॉक अबाउट mental health and therapy specifically, I personally feel that it is very important to have the understanding and believe in the idea of mental well-being. Because if one is able to strike the balance between physical, emotional, mental, psychological well-being, I think generally we're going to be okay in our lives. Of course life is challenging, but nothing stops you from having fun while living your own lives.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree. To end, any advice, anything you would like to say to the audience today?
Yeah. So I used to say this in my unit as well, कि advice तो मैं नहीं देता, क्योंकि I don't think I'm capable enough of giving advice to people. At best, I can give a suggestion. And I suggest that mental well-being or health or just the mindset is probably just the difference of a choice. If I choose to be happy, I can be happy. If I don't choose to be happy, then there are so many reasons that I can be sad about. So if one is able to probably train themselves, or probably speak to somebody, or probably just able to understand that you have a choice, and then how you exercise it will also then flow from the same space that you're aware about what kind of things make sense to you or not. तो suggestion यही है कि आप अपने choice को पहचानें, and choice exercise करें, and उसको फिर embrace करें और enjoy करें. That's what I think.
That is so important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm
Thank
feeling
you.
so inspired.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm very grateful कि we
I am
could
more
have
grateful to
this
you
conversation.
for
Thank you so
chatting up with me.
much.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.